everyone, it's Terrence Branley with the Gr IT Podcast, and today I have Sushma Maganti, who is the co-founder of Maganti IT Resources, which obviously bears the name of yourself. So we know that that means you wear a lot of hats and have done a lot to grow your firm. So we're looking forward to talk to you today about what you guys do.
Thank you, Terrence, for having me here. Really appreciate this conversation that we are going to have here. And I mean, me and my partner, his name is Prasad, and we both started the company a while ago with the intention that we would be able to help the small to medium scale companies that we have worked with earlier and slowly help them to build their help them with their digital transformations. So that's how we started the organization. And so it was more about like 20 years now, but we picked up in the last 10 years morely in the more expansion. So that's where we stand on our company.
So tell me about your background and what led up to you guys, you and your partner, kind of founding Maganti IT Resources, and kind of give us some,
So, I mean, we came here as more of on the employment from India way back 20 years ago, and we started as consultants in the technology space, and then we have seen the need in the enterprises based on our skills we built up, that there is a need for small to medium sized companies as well, and even in the enterprise companies of the talent, and also the type of talent is not just the technology, but also to kind of understand the business problem and able to bridge the gap for the technology and the business teams. So that is where we saw the need, and we slowly established the company. And and I mean, in the process, we have built up with the people first. It's always about people, right? So
it's people and processes. It's people and processes, right? And
it is
frankly, it all
always
comes,
people in the
especially
process.
and especially on the services side, the consulting side, right? With the business that we're all in, right? It's the people.
It's always the people, and making sure they're following the processes, and the processes are built around people. So that's the idea behind it.
It's a big loop, right?
Exactly. Um, so I mean, we operated in more of like a full stack technology company, where all of our team are able to do the digital transformation for, I mean, for many of the mid-sized companies and even in the enterprises. And in the enterprise world, we have helped in the various, like in the Oracle side, servicing in the Oracle consulting. Those are the types of engagements we have worked with. So that's how we grew. And what we are want to kind of move forward is basically how we can expand our niche in the manufacturing and also in the financial side of the domains. That's how I see, because they are the bigger buckets, and there is always a bigger need for in those two domains. And that's
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about each of those separate, because one of the questions I always ask is, hey, like, what are the problems that you're solving for your clients? What are their challenges, right? And financial and let's call it manufacturing have two completely different
better. Yeah.
types of challenges that they're facing. So let's take each, because I want to understand the problems that each of those industries are facing with regards to you know uh, you know modernization, moving from on-prem to the cloud. Data, AI obviously comes into it, which we'll talk about later. But let's just talk about each, what the problems and the challenges each of those different types of industries are facing. You can start with either
Yeah.
manufacturing or finance, but let's talk about both.
So in the manufacturing space, basically they are more focused on the engineering aspects of their business. That's how they build their teams. But they always see the need for the extended IT partner, for the fact that they would have less number of IT team because that's not their space. But they need all of their processes and automated, so that they can operate efficiently. So in terms of their on-premise applications, they would like to expand it into the cloud space and be able to acquire many other technologies. So we help them do the cloud migrations and on Azure space. And we kind of deployed its lift and shift applications, basically taking their on-premise applications to the cloud. Those are the types of aspects we did, and also completely modernizing their applications, which were legacy. Obviously, the legacy will be like they will be outdated, and they would not. I mean, they cannot.
And probably on top of outdated, because that typically is what you find right when you go on prem. But not only that, there's probably a lot of band-aid type of
Yeah,
applications
exactly.
put in place, right? Like over the years, they've done like, hey, great, we need this to solve this problem that we're looking at now. And so over time, you have a lot of band-aids on top of band-aids that you probably are looking to say, hey, there's a better way. Let's look at this from a holistic standpoint,
Holistic.
right?
Exactly, exactly. So that's where we try to understand what are the different applications that they currently have in their internal environment, and basically try to see, okay, how can we combine them? First of all, it's ensuring how their business landscape is operating and trying to um, kind of identify what kind of processes that need to be transformed for them, or what kind of technology that needs to kind of go with it. So that's how we kind of help them put things in place for them. So and establish this roadmap to move or migrate the applications, so that and in the very recently with the AI, because everybody is talking about AI, how can I automate some of these processes? I mean, we what we have been doing is, because HR activities sometimes the types of questions that come from the employees are very much redundant. Like, I need a benefits package, I need so many of these things. So for that matter, a lot of teams are looking for how can we integrate AI or the chatbots, so where we can reduce their redundant activities and can improve the productivity for them, and focus more on the complex queries that they are getting from the employees, or even solve, okay, what kind of like is it like a simple question versus a complex question? They're very varied because of legal issues that kind of go in it. So they would like to the HR team would like to spend more on the complex legal questions that the employees would have, rather than like, I what's my PTO, what do I have, those type of things. These type of bots that we kind of put in place help the teams. So we are also doing it in more of like legal, like going through the legal documentation and understanding, and trying to break it down into more of simpler language, because that is absolutely needed, because who will understand the legal jargon?
Nobody other than the attorneys that wrote them. Let's be honest.
Exactly. I mean, in my technical world itself, how many people can understand the technical jargon? The business people don't understand. So even for that matter, we kind of help translate that with this AI capabilities into more of business friendly information. So it definitely process them. I mean, helps them make their decisions wise.
And that's interesting. We have a client that's in, let's just say that they provide, AI solutions for contact centers for customer
Mhm.
experience, right? When you're talking about, it's very similar. It's just for the internal customer, right? Which is essentially their, employees. And
Exactly.
yeah,
So, I mean, in many ways, that those are the areas that we are working, and one of the areas that we also tend to work in the data engineering, where a lot of data currently exists in their internal systems, where they do not know how to find the insights into and make their business decisions. So, bringing into one platform and able to navigate them to understand what they uh, do it is something that is one of our verticals that we also offer to the clients. So
And so even what you just described right there is kind of in the, let's call it, in the HR related scheme, although the data, that's generic too in terms of both it would happen to manufacturing and finance. Are you, when you're looking to focus on those two, is there a reason specific to each of those industries? Because both those things that we just talked about are probably
right.
going to be the same, more whether it's finance or operations or manufacturing, excuse me, but more because they're probably in a mid-market type of environment. But are you seeing any other that are specific to each of those industries?
I mean, each industry has their own areas of and problems, and manufacturing they would like to see more of like their I mean, how their products are being utilized, or what kind of data that they're because they're more of like OEM products.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of data that is generated? Okay, how do I improve upon these products? Should we create on new versions of these products? So those kind of aspects would be of help that we are seeing for the engineers so that they can manufacture better products or taking the input from them. So that those are one things, and there are other aspects is like in general, see what is the demand for some of the products, and how can we project, how can we manufacture them more, the lead time, reduce the lead time on some of these products so that it helps them to be ready with that kind of products available, so that they're not losing the clients to their competitors. So that those are the type of analytics that we provide to our clients. So that's the way we are seeing in the industry.
That's interesting. So the product development side is interesting. That's almost like market feedback they're looking for, right? To kind of get input in terms of what the market's looking for in that product, and then from the what I would call predictive analysis, right? In terms of, forecasting, right? That's, kind of an important business operation part. And it's
Yeah,
different than
absolutely.
it's different what I would think of in terms of, AI or, in manufacturers or operations. But it's all a part of it, right? It's all a part of business efficiency and trying to make, their process in terms of going to market as well as their, operating profit.
So in the finance side of things, what we are seeing more of rigorously is about the risk and compliance, because that is always a high priority, I guess, in the financial industry, and ensuring the those. I mean, we do not operate like we did not see much of data analytics or the predictive analytics in the finance side, but I mean, I see that there is a lot of data that even on the finance side that they capture, and obviously that adds so much of value for the people who is running in the industry. But as I see that where we operate is more of in the risk and compliance, and that is where I'm saying, okay, what kind of how do we prevent the risk, what type of risks involved, like business risk or operational risk, or I mean, you never know, right? Like fraudulent risk, many aspects of risks are there that we are seeing, and all of our we operate in providing in the project management activities, so that helps them to run those programs in such a way that they can identify the challenges and be able to deliver what they can deliver to their end customers. So that's what the industry is actually looking for.
And do you see that the trend primarily in finance is that they're looking more at it from a risk mitigation standpoint rather than using the data from a, let's call it, driving additional revenue or a better customer experience type of thing?
I mean, as I have seen in the industry, revenue generation is one aspect, probably up until a year. But now, with the risk getting really big, their mitigation factors are really big in the finance right now, because because they pay so much of the penalties, and to reduce those kind of penalties from the regulatory boards. So they certainly have to really correct things from inside out. Let me put it that way. So they all know there are challenges and every organization, and not just in the finance, any organization, they know there is risk involved, in whatever the thing, because there are many touch points. When I see there is a touch point, there is a risk, because even if I walk out the door, I have to understand that there is risk that I can get into a car accident. So how I have to be careful about it. So we have to be preventative. Like I think we need to build the preventative mindset in any industry, and that's how I guess we will operate well, rather than reactive mindset. So
And it's hard sometimes, right? Because especially when we're talking to clients, regardless of the industry and what we're doing, preventative is always, it seems like it's a harder one to pursue at times, just because it looks that there's always risk and rewards, right? Business, there's always risk and rewards, and you have to look at preventative stuff as like, okay, is that going to generate a potential ROI? Is the risk worth it, that I need to invest capital or operating budget into something that's preventative? And again, every industry is different, and I would think that in the financial side there's much
yeah.
higher risk. That's probably why there's a little bit more of a focus on that risk mitigation.
So one of the things I have seen is, I mean, even in our organization, right? We have, I mean, in any organization, what I would also see is we need to give that risk factor or the risk hat to somebody very specific, instead of us taking on that risk, as a thing. I know it's a challenging thing, because if we separate that risk from the owners or even the decision makers, because you always have somebody to say, something is not right of what's the decision you're making. What is the balance that you're kind of going to, take into consideration. So that's how, I mean, we've been successful in our organization to separating the risk, to an individual in person, and we operate on a different level.
Can,
Like,
can, I,
okay.
can, I, can I ask you, Gwyneth? That's very fascinating. And here's why. Because the way that you just framed it is that this person, even in your organization, is separate from you as the founders, right? And that's interesting, right? Because you know that there's an importance there. And you're basically saying, I want to set up a check and balance to make sure that, because as business people, we have typically are, I don't say single minded, but like we're trying to grow our firms and we have a direction that we're trying to go. And a lot of times, because we're entrepreneurs, we're a little bit less risk averse or more risk averse. I'm trying to think of which
Exactly.
one, right? But our risk threshold is a lot less than, let's say, in other companies. And so to have someone that you've set up to say, I want you to be my checks and balance. I want you to challenge me on certain things because I know I won't do it myself as the entrepreneur. So I want you to talk to that, because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have our compliance officer. I think every company should really have that compliance officer who has that legal background, and definitely, able to kind of checks on what is the decision making we are doing, like in every aspect. I mean, we bring on new initiatives, especially I kind of look outside, because I've stopped being inside the business and I'm trying to be on the business, and try. So when I kind of, see the opportunities and trying to see which one is the right one for us to take forward, more than financially whether this is feasible for us or not, we really see whether this is going to be, put us in any trouble, in the long run, in any partnership or anything. So that's how we first, that's our check first, and then we will see the finance, whether, okay, if finance it happens or not, we do not know, but whether we are at risk or not is what we see. So I think with me being in this, particularly in the security background, I have that mindset of preventative rather than reactive. So that is one of the, and that's something that we kind of implemented, and we respect that. We respect the fact that it is there, and we've been successful in falling off the tracks in many ways, in our organization, and we see that as a success for us.
I would fall on the, I would be the pushing person. So, which is good. There's a time and place for everything. But you mentioned the challenges, right? And there are a plethora of challenges that exist in our businesses, and especially when it comes to growth. Everyone thinks, hey, growth is great, it's easy. But it is probably one of the most challenging things that exist, and because you're just faced with so many different decisions, so many different. I'll use your analogy earlier. So many different touch points. The more people you hire, the more things that become variables in the business that could go right or could go wrong. And I guess I'm curious, as you grow, Maganti, what do you feel are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing with regards to growth and growing your firm?
I mean, we have been. I mean, in terms of growth perspective, I mean, always it's the supply and demand, right? So that's one some of the things that we as because we are technologists in the background. So
Talk about that, why
when
that's the challenge in terms of, right, because again, I think this probably goes back to like the people side and overall, but talk about why the supply and demand, in your business is the challenge when it comes to that.
I mean, one of the things is like how do you differentiate yourself? Like, so if you can, what I have seen in the industry is like if we operate at the same level as all others, like all other IT firms, so you're part of the supply, so, and you are operating in the competitive space. And when you're being in competitive, you just compete for the same thing. And that mindset is what we are trying to reduce. So let's not operate in that competitive space and and rather embrace to be more collaborative and nurture with other partners. And how can we grow together so that you operate uh, we bring you the business that you are looking for and you bring the business we so that we can create the demand for ourselves in that aspect. So stop competing and stop collaborating more to gain the more business. So that is where we are being more successful in very lately, and that's what we are looking at. And in terms of the demand, we what we are also doing is like trying to create I mean, one of the recent things that we have also been doing in the research of the marketing space is like what kind of different strategies that we can really put in. How do we create the demand for what we are doing? um, so so that it so we as technologists, we know the process, and we can definitely solve their problem. But telling them that you have the problem is something that is always a challenge from a technology team's perspective. So that is where we are trying to figure out how do we do it differently, how do we make it right for the clients. So that is where we are trying to create various strategies in place and establishing that. And so we are trying to create the demand for our services where we are see that it is going to happen, because that's how we have operate. And there's no way we can go backwards, right?
No, and I'll give you, again, this is probably part grow IT sales pitch, so I'm going to make sure and preface that first. But I think one of the ways that we've seen, because we only work with IT consulting firms, and that is that it's very heavily relationship driven, and right, and there are a lot of capable people out in the marketplace to be able to solve technology challenges. But the biggest challenge when it comes to growing a firm, and let's call it from the sales and marketing standpoint, is just to get into conversations, to be able to build a relationship, to be able to start to establish some trust, so that that prospect starts to become comfortable with sharing more about their business, much like we're talking today about our respective businesses. To where they feel comfortable sharing with you more about their business, to where then you can then help them make assessments where you see fit. So kind of like I'm doing this right now with you, right?
Right,
Hey,
right.
what I do is just try and get as many conversations with your ideal prospects as possible. Just we're normal people. I think what's happened over several years and probably the last decade, as technology has become more prevalent, especially I'm talking from the sales and marketing side, is that tools have become more available and there's just so much noise out there from going direct to the market. Like, hey, I can do this to help you. Here's what we do, and here's what we can help you. And it's like there's technology has facilitated some great things. Us for our ability right now today to talk thousands of miles away, but at the same time, people are forgetting that you have to, do what's been successful for your business in the first place, and that is building relationships, right? Like I would come to you and say, I want to help you. Yeah, we can do all this for your firm from a sales and marketing perspective without having a relationship first and understanding, okay, is this a fit? Do you think we can help? Right? The same way that you guys probably approach it from an IT standpoint. And I think back to your point of the supply and demand, what that does is it pulls you away from being in that supply group, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody else. And all of a sudden you are looked at differently, right, than everybody else. And so I guess that's a little plug for our process, but just really more in what terms of, looking at things from a long-term approach, which you seem to be doing in other parts of your business. So I would, that's kind of what I would suggest. But um, what is, I want to stay on the challenges thing because you've got great perspective on this. What have you done, things that you have done that have worked for your firm, and what are things that you've done that haven't worked for your firm in terms of growing, growing your business?
Since I am the co-founder, I have an other partner who is also my husband. But we have come with the background of technology, and some of the things that we have that really helped in our business is establishing networking in the technology space, and trying to establish relationships with different organizations where we have worked it prior, and where we have also in the where we have met in the networking space a lot of people, and that's how we established our business. And from different challenges perspective, sometimes it's about talent, right? Getting the right talent.
The people
Yeah,
side.
exactly. Sometimes if you want to get things done, it's also a big challenge for from a talent perspective. But we have also taken that challenge away from being, but with the training processes in place for the people, not just at the skill level, like the technical skill level, but about how do they can present themselves, how do they can like professionally grow themselves and present themselves in front of the with the clients. Because with just writing the code, it's not efficient, because not able to understand the client's problems is the biggest challenge, and that's the failure actually. So we tend to collaborate with the clients, and understand their problems, because we have gained the industry knowledge over a period of time, and that industry knowledge is what we can bring the solutions faster for the industry. I mean, that's how we have seen the challenges and kind of translated them slowly over a period of time. And uh, I mean, it's a process what we have observed and everything in that.
Yeah, and I think what you touched on is so important too in terms of the development side for the people, right? Because your goal, right, is to make it a better experience for the client, right? Because you are essentially, you know, you're helping your people learn. Like, listen, we know the IT, solution side of things, right? But there's a business process side of things, and from a
Yeah,
client standpoint, they're always constantly wearing the business part of it, right? Business is profit and loss, right? And understanding, if you can look at things from a business owner's, or an executive's viewpoint, right? The risk reward, the return on investment, things of that nature, and just to be able to have that conversation, right? They're gonna feel like they're trusting you more to be able to bring that right IT solution in. The other part of it too is that from a development standpoint, from a people standpoint, because it's one of the biggest challenges, is that probably helps you with your retention side of things, because you're probably teaching them to do the things that aren't being taught in other firms.
yeah. I mean, one thing I do not know how the industry thinks about it, but this is how I think. I mean, IT is a blue collar job for the business white collar people.
I
I
gotta
do not
tell
know.
you, I think that's the first time I've heard that, and I can't say that I disagree.
I mean, because without a business, there is no IT. It's not the other way around. I think that IT, I mean, I operate an IT company, but if I don't have a manufacturing company or a finance company or any other company that needs IT support or IT needs or services, what would IT do? Because IT was not invented recently. Came in place recently. So I always kind of nurture our team that we need to think about in the business terms, and how do we understand the business problems and help the business people kind of operate effectively so that they can build they can build a business, and we can grow together. That's the collaboration that we always have to think in a that's a harmony. It's a because we have to live in harmony. It's not that I am successful or you are not successful, right? So it's that's how I see things.
I see them exact. It has to be a symbiotic relationship. It has to be. And again, I mean, that's look at our name on our. Well, that's the podcast, but our Grow IT partners, right? Like that's how we view, right? And we kind of go into it as well. And I think that's something that is missing in the marketplace. Doesn't matter if it's in the sales and marketing aspect or an IT services solution. I think that's the one part where a lot of folks are missing, and it's not hard. I always try. We talk about it all the time here. Is the first thing you should be thinking is what's in it for them, not what's in it for us.
Yeah.
Right? We go value forward. We do podcasts. We do a lot of different things, but it's in the methodology of like let's just try and figure out what's in it for them. There will always be something in it for us if we figure out how to solve their what's in it for them.
Right, right. No, absolutely. So, I mean, that's what it is. So, yeah, please.
No, I was just gonna say. Now I know I've beaten the growth part. That's and I appreciate it because that we you've got an interesting perspective on things. Let's talk about some of the trends in IT, and I don't even need to probably give options. I'll just say let's just go right to AI and talk about it. We talked about it early in our conversation, but what are the conversations that you're hearing from executives? What are they coming to you with? And what are they saying? How do we leverage it? What do we do? Where do we start? And maybe a combination of all of those. But let's just kind of open it up to you and give me kind of a perspective on what you're hearing out there and what you're doing.
So, I mean, in the AI space, AI is not going to stop anywhere soon. I mean, it's kind of going to grow. And one of the recent things, what I'm hearing a lot is in probably another 2 decades, we will be thinking, or the robots or the computers will be thinking as equal as us, because of the Moore's law. Like every time the data has been increasing, and that's the same effective law will apply here. And sooner or later, we have to embrace the AI, and we cannot operate without AI. The fact that it's not going to replace us as long as we are creative, and we know how to handle it, just like anything. Like if we know how to handle it and make it use for us, then and bring our creative side of things, I think AI would always be a tool for us rather than as a replacement of us. I think many of them think of the same. In the industry. However, there is the bigger fear factor of losing the jobs, because as you see in the last week or so, or this week, we heard that there is a lot of let go of the, I mean, layoffs in the organizations. I mean, is it because of AI? I think it's because of the skill. It's because of the skill. And if you are not trying to bring your creative side of things, and if it's just a 9 to 5 job, that's the challenge. People should, I mean, you can still operate in 9 to 5, but you should bring your creative side of things on how do you make the life of the other person effective. So I think if everybody does think like that, I think anything is just a tool. So what I'm seeing in the AI as well, is like it can be useful in many operational tasks where we are not able to handle them. Like as I mentioned, HR teams can become effective by putting the bots. The legal team can be effective. The lawyers are burning out, right? Like when they do a lot of legal cases, they are burning out because some of the answers we just go for simple answers for them, and so those kind of things would really help them. And even let's say as a common man, right, in the AI, like yeah, I know there is so much of legal, like I mean litigation, legal, and everything is there. um, when I go on the road and when I come into an accident or something, I do not know what to handle it. Maybe that's a bot that somebody can create, and that will be of help. There are many use cases for AI for us to in our day to day operations, and I see that if everyday day to day operations are being tackled for humans, I guess AI will become a much more useful tool, and that's how I see it.
I don't disagree with you. I think just and you kind of pointed out just that it's just as an important tool as the internet was when the internet came about in the business world. I'm old enough to remember that when the first company I worked for, it was right around the time when the internet was coming into play, and there was this fear around it and not understanding what to do, and and they were building intranets to kind of build fenced areas around. But it's I always try and liken AI to what happened with the internet, except the difference is going to be that this is going to move much faster at a much grander scale. And as long as you view it, to your point, as a tool that can be harnessed to as us humans bring our creativity to things, that it can make us much more efficient, much more powerful, and much more productive.
Yep, I agree with you on that,
All
Terrence.
right, that's easy then. What is it that you can? What is it that you enjoy the most doing? Whether it's when in terms of working with clients or in the solutions you're providing, like what is it that you enjoy the most? Because
I mean,
once you're a founder and you start getting in all sorts of things that are far different from what you started doing right when you came into the business world.
see, I mean, being an entrepreneur or is like getting into the uncertain terms, right? It's all about uncertainty. How to operating in the uncertainty more effectively, I think, is what we have to embrace every day, every minute of our life. And I definitely harnessed I definitely learned that from many of the mentors I had in my career, and so that's what I really like it, because every day I like a challenge. Without a challenge, I cannot sustain. So the unknown territory is where I like to operate all the time, and that's where we really see the value. We create the value for ourselves, because um, making the uncertain certain for the clients is what makes our day valuable, and for them also. So that's where I see that. And one of the things is, many of the people do let me know that I have a very keen eye of problem identification, and that basically helps that helps the teams, like to kind of provide them the right solutions. And that is where I kind of make sure across our company, um, figure out the problem, because when you talk to many people, like we will not we'll see only the grand scale problem, but the underlying problem is what we have to be very clear and precise for them to really provide them the solution. So the uncertainty is where we operate well, where we operate effectively. So
I think you articulated about that about as good as I could have. We operate in the gray area as entrepreneurs. There is just no certainty in any shape or form. And it's just it's part of it, right?
it's part of
And
the
it's interesting, the problem solving part, right? And one of the questions, and you heard me mention the band-aids earlier. So a lot of times, even in our own firm, when something will come up, and I'll say, is that really the root problem? Are we really getting to the root problem, or are we putting a band-aid on something? And I had a conversation this morning, so if someone in our firm is listening to this, they'll probably know it's them. But it's so important, right? Because band-aids are just temporary solutions. But in order to solve the true business problem, you have to at least understand and uncover what the root problem is. You may not attempt to fix it right now, but you do have to understand it. So as long as we uncover something, we have a solution. But I've always challenged us to find, do we understand what the true root problem is? We don't have to solve it now, but we do have to understand it. And that's an important aspect to have. So I don't know if you feel the same.
See, this is exactly what I'm saying. I kind of speak to many people, and when we speak the same language of uncertainty, and that's how we kind of connect. That's how we build the relationships, and so these are the ways we establish relationships and nurture and live in harmony, I believe.
We're going to have to talk after this podcast. I think we have a lot more in common that we should be helping each other in a symbiotic relationship. But with that, so I don't want to go into the sales part. But like, can you walk us through the path of what it typically looks like for when you take on a new client? I don't know if it's in an audit format or even just a prospect that may be looking, saying, "Hey, you know what? Maybe that you guys can help me." Maybe kind of tackle a little bit of both of those.
So, I mean, sometimes what we end up with the prospect is like we tend to understand, have that initial conversation, like, okay, what space, what domain they are operating in, and all of the gray areas for them, on the black and white for them. What is the black and white for, what they are seeing right now? What are the gray areas that they do not have? They have challenges with, and that's where we kind of understand the challenges. Like, is it in the business processes? Whether it is the talent that they are looking for, what is the challenge with their internal team members, that of the skills, because we provide the talent as well as the solutions. There are two different aspects of it. So depending upon the needs of the client, understanding what they need first, and then accordingly tackle them in terms of what they need is what they we approach it. And obviously, we tend to work with business people, like who operate at the CEO level, and also we operate at the technology teams, because when we operate with technology team, they know the technology. We don't have to tell them like, oh, this is your problem, and that's how, because they know already what they're what they're already dealing with. Okay, now let's get to the crux of it. What's the technology you need? How do we put it together? Let's kind of brainstorm on the technology and kind of
How do
get to
we
the
fix it?
solution. Yeah, how do we fix it? That's a consulting side of things. But when you tackle with the business teams, obviously, if you tell them the technology, forget about it, Sushma, I don't want to even talk to you.
Because they're thinking from the business standpoint, right? Kind of, it's interesting. It's kind of like what we talked about earlier, is as us, entrepreneurs, founders, right? We're bridging both of those. We're having to bridge both of those areas. But when you get into large organizations, that C-level executive, that business operating unit person is thinking, they don't want to know how the wires are connected, right? Or why the tech stack looks the way it does. They're looking at it strictly from a business processes standpoint.
Exactly. And I mean, how much time do we get with them? Like, we need to really, really be careful about what we tell them and how do we convince them. And like, basically talk to them like, this is your business problem, and I'm going to solve you with this timeline and this finance, and you're good. And that's it.
I, I
That
I
is
like to
it.
tell my team, I'm like, think about it like me, right? Like, I don't want to know the nitty gritty. I just want to know the nuts and bolts in terms of what's the problem? How do we solve it? How do we make things more efficient? How do we make our business go faster? How do we help our clients get more, right? Like, and again, I try and I tell them that just because I'm like, I am like our ICP. These, founders and executives are thinking the exact same way. They don't want to know how the meal is made. They just want it to come out, with a great presentation, taste great, right, and a great meal. And so I think that is important to understand, and especially when you're going from, IT, IT groups who are like, we know we can talk tech all day long, but they
Yeah,
probably
exactly.
also don't understand the business direction a lot of times. And that's a nature I would think is prevalent in a lot of larger organizations, right? That it just that message doesn't always get filtered down. So having to talk with and work with both of those sides is a challenge in itself.
Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, yeah, as I mentioned, for technologists, moving into that space is a challenge. But if you once you harness that, I believe then it's an easy ride. And I have the privilege to work with great people in this whole and. And I mean, it's always that's what I'm saying. It's always collaboration, and we grow from it. We live on it. We thrive on it. So definitely, I have. There is, and I like to coach. I like to coach, and I kind of want to create a series for myself. Like, okay, how do I coach the people? It's not just the technology; it's about the other areas to be successful. So yeah.
So with that said, I've enjoyed our conversation. If a business owner or executive is watching this, right, and wondering if you can, kind of help them solve their business, challenges, or maybe someone on the IT side, right, that may be talking IT. So either of those folks, what's a good way for them to get hold of you guys, to learn more about you, to follow you?
I mean, they can always reach out to me on my email, and I'm available on LinkedIn. So I have an open book all the time.
All right, we're going to put your LinkedIn links down there. We'll put your email address in there, your website,
Absolutely.
and your website is how would am I? I want to make sure you said.
mitresource.com. So, I mean, I'll kind of give you a little bit of story about
Yeah.
the Maganti IT as well. I mean, I mean, basically, that's me and my husband carry that last name. And when we are trying to look up, find a company name, like what we thought is, I always had an aspiration for MIT. Um, I mean, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and my husband happened to study in India in a college called like Manipal Institute of Technology. So happened to have both of them, and say it kind of matched with ours, and we kind of created that Maganti IT, and we call that MIT for a reason. And all of our team members really strive towards that aspiration because that's the value. When you study in MIT, you kind of deliver what that is. So we kind of created that kind of zone, so they tend to operate at that level.
That is a great story. That's your culture, right? I mean, that's what you created,
It's our
and
culture.
that is fascinating. One important thing before we leave here, that the story behind it, right, is really important, right? Like we could have just skipped over that, but that is so important. What I've found is that's important to our people, right? So the things
Yeah,
that we take, I think, as owners, founders, executives, right, that are very busy, they're thinking that those type of personalizations are the things that make up their culture of your firm, of your group, are really important. We had one of those kind of breakthroughs 2 weeks ago in a meeting where myself and a co-founder were sharing things about our clients to our team. And one of our team members was like started breaking down crying. She was just got so emotional. And I was like, man, we need to do a better job of communicating the why and the personal side behind some of these things, because I think in business some of that gets lost. We kind of skip over those things.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the conversation.
I appreciate it. We're gonna do this again because this is one of the funnest conversations I've had. I've really enjoyed it. I have, and I appreciate your time today. And the only thing I ask is you will come back at some point because this has been a good one. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thanks, Terrence. Nice talking to you.